try not to do it. In the first Charity Deacon book, it was really important that people, like, the readers knew that she understood the emotions that she was observing. So I had like one paragraph of how she felt when something happened to her, similar to this, and how bad she felt couldn't possibly come close to what these women were feeling. So it was just really, really short, so like a quick little flashback and then back into the story. Because otherwise I didn't know how to make that connection so that I could show how bad this was. And in this digital age, you can always write your backstory as a free ebook. You can write your backstory as a free ebook if you want. Or you can put it as a blog post. Once your book is out, you can say, hey, if people want to know really what's going on, here's the backstory.
Bonus feature.
Bonus features.
Yeah. What are your backstory? Could you say something about prologue?
I don't know if I've got it on here because I hate prologue. Okay, I'll give you a really good example of a prologue. Does anybody read Clive Cussler?
Oh, I read it.
His prologues are perfect. The inciting incident in his story usually happens 50 to 150 years ago.
Yeah.
And his prologue is that story. It's actually the backstory, but it's not an explanation of where we're going. It's the incident that caused whatever dire circumstance Dirk has to fix. Why the world is being, threatened by this algae in the sea. So like it's like a short story ahead of the story, but it ties into the story. Bad prologues, fantasy is just rife with bad prologues, where people have to explain what the world is like, what the magic system's like, what the political system's like, and then you can get into your story. Or they do what TV does, so quite often now TV shows will show you this horrendous scene and then 3 weeks earlier. And so they'll do the inciting incident and then they'll go back and write a chapter of backstory. But they'll call it prologue. I always advise people, like, cause I do some critique work for people, I usually advise them if they've got a prologue is like, if you really need it, why isn't it chapter 1? And if you took it out, would it spoil the story? So just to be very careful with prologues. They have their place. They're very misused. What is a prologue? Okay. So the question is, what is a prologue? Prologue is something that happens before your story happens. That's it. So trying to think of a so with Clive Cussler, so for those of you who don't read him, he writes nautical thrillers. He might be dead now. And what happens is usually a ship will sink or something like that, and then somebody goes looking for the cargo and they become the supervillain and blah, blah, blah. It's like James Bond in the water. But his prologue is the story that happens of the ship sinking in the 1800s. And then we come immediately to present day and how that is impacting the world right now. Right? So the prologue is a story before the story. The ones tend to be quite short, but they have to be long. I recently read a story, and when I got through the prologue, it's interesting enough, and I read chapter 1 and I'm going, what are we doing? Like, how does this relate to what I just read? And like, I kind of struggled through the next 3 chapters and went, it doesn't. So I don't know, like, it needs to be further into the book, I think. So I read a lot of free books, just to learn. Because I'm always trying to learn.
I'm just trying to understand what you're saying about backstory and flashbacks. When I think of literary fiction that's character-driven, almost every flashback seems to be backstory.
It's really, so how many people saw Lost?
The TV series?
TV series.
Yeah. Not all.
Almost completely flashbacks. You have a little story, then you find out why they're on the island. A little story, you find out why. And it was done really well.
So is that
because
backstory? I'm not sure what.
It is, kind of.
What's the
It is.
difference? Okay.
It is. Again, it's so all the rules that I'm kind of suggesting up here, if you can break them elegantly, feel free. If you think of like something like Gone with the Wind, backstory would have been an explanation of the woman's role in pre-Civil War South, and how she had to find somebody to marry. It starts with her coming down the stairs, or squeezing in her waist to something scary. But it starts there, and it assumes you know what the South was supposed to be like before the Civil War. If Margaret Mitchell had not assumed you knew that, she would have written a little backstory or prologue for the beginning of it, so that you could understand what life was like then.
Is that like backstory, like a historical novel, so you know what's going on?
Yeah, it can be, it can be.
Yeah.
So backstory, what I'm talking about on the previous slide was, let's say your character, okay, let's go back to they want to win the race. They need to win the race because they need approval that comes with that. The backstory would be that situation where they didn't get picked for the team, where they failed the race, where like all these little stories that you will write yourself so you understand it, that you might put into the book itself, or you might not. Right?
What about something like Douglas Adams in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where he's bouncing back and forth between the guide, which explains everything, and basically provides backstory, and the action of the characters?
Yeah, that defies this, doesn't it?
Right.
Because it's like a narrator telling you what's happening.
I think we shouldn't get bogged down on
Yeah.
the final draft. We're just starting with the first draft.
I'm pretty sure he didn't start out that way.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah, but you look at some, like, so you're always looking at the final draft when we're looking at discussions, so something like The Great Gatsby. It's narrated through an unreliable narrator, and who's the protagonist of that story? Right? And what's the backstory like? All those things are there, but now they've all been carved out nicely. We're talking about that rough block of stone that you're gonna find your angel in, right?
Does the narrative be there as the protagonist?
And I think Nick Carraway is actually the protagonist of Great Gatsby. I think so. That's what I said in my essay. Let's move on to settings, this character. Maybe we'll come back to some more of these questions because I want to make sure we get through. Setting his character. I'm really bad at this. My first draft might as well take place in a vacuum. But there has to be, like a writer I listened to her podcast, that the reader has to be able to put their back up against something. So you don't have to go through huge amounts of description. You can do that in your first draft, or like me, you can not do it in your first draft and add it in revision. But they need to have some grounding. But also there needs to be a reason why your story is there. So if you're setting your story in New York City, there needs to be a reason why New York City and not some other big city. So you kind of, when you're looking at your setting, start to think about, is this a character in my story? So here, if we take New York City, there's some unique things about New York City. It's a big city of little neighborhoods. It's smelly. It's rushed. It's 24 hours a day. It's high fashion. It's huge poverty. It's multicultural, and it's divided and things like that. So all those reasons are why you would set it there. If you use none of that, the question is, why are you setting it there?